This is the California State Senate.
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 Este es el Senado Estatal de California.
This is the California State Senate. This is the California State Senate.
This is the California State Senate.
Esta es el Senado Estatal de California.
This is the California State Senate.
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 Este es el Senado Estatal de California.
This is the California State Senate.
This is the California State Senate.
This is the California State Senate.
Esta es el Senado Estatal de California.
This is the California State Senate.
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 Este es el Senado Estatal de California.
This is the California State Senate.
This is the California State Senate.
This is the California State Senate.
Esta es el Senado Estatal de California.
This is the California State Senate.
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 Este es el Senado Estatal de California.
This is the California State Senate.
This is the California State Senate.
This is the California State Senate.
Esta es el Senado Estatal de California.
This is the California State Senate.
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 Este es el Senado Estatal de California.
This is the California State Senate.
This is the California State Senate.
This is the California State Senate.
Esta es el Senado Estatal de California.
This is the California State Senate.
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 Este es el Senado Estatal de California.
This is the California State Senate.
This is the California State Senate.
This is the California State Senate.
Esta es el Senado Estatal de California.
This is the California State Senate.
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 Este es el Senado Estatal de California.
This is the California State Senate.
This is the California State Senate.
This is the California State Senate.
Esta es el Senado Estatal de California.
This is the California State Senate.
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 Este es el Senado Estatal de California.
This is the California State Senate.
This is the California State Senate.
This is the California State Senate.
Esta es el Senado Estatal de California.
This is the California State Senate.
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 Este es el Senado Estatal de California.
This is the California State Senate.
This is the California State Senate.
This is the California State Senate.
Esta es el Senado Estatal de California.
This is the California State Senate.
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 Este es el Senado Estatal de California.
This is the California State Senate.
This is the California State Senate.
This is the California State Senate.
Esta es el Senado Estatal de California.
This is the California State Senate.
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 Este es el Senado Estatal de California.
This is the California State Senate.
This is the California State Senate.
This is the California State Senate.
Esta es el Senado Estatal de California.
This is the California State Senate.
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 Este es el Senado Estatal de California.
This is the California State Senate.
This is the California State Senate.
This is the California State Senate.
Esta es el Senado Estatal de California.
This is the California State Senate.
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 Este es el Senado Estatal de California.
This is the California State Senate.
This is the California State Senate.
This is the California State Senate.
Esta es el Senado Estatal de California.
This is the California State Senate.
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 Good morning, everyone. I'm State Senator Fran Pavley, and it's a pleasure for me to welcome you to an AB 32 Select Committee. And we're looking specifically at new technologies that we probably all agree in this room that we need to scale up. And this is an interesting mix of people. I hope you like the format. I experimented a few years ago on water and energy discussion with having all the players in the room sitting around a table, and I thought having it conversation-oriented rather than just a typical formal legislative hearing where we have a few members sitting here and panels coming forward. This would probably be very productive because, as we know, the work is just beginning in many of these areas. And by putting so many of you in the room that will need to collaborate together, we think it'll be really, really productive. And so I wanted to thank you all for coming. You somehow got through Sunset Boulevard before Obama did. Now, we called him saying if he's in the neighborhood, please stop by. So we'll see if he turns on Hillgard and stops by, but I don't think so. He has other things on his plate, but thank you again for coming. I also want to thank UCLA Law School. They hosted this event. We have some refreshments in the back. Please feel free to get up at any time and help yourself to coffee or water. And a water bottle if you need a commemorative Fran Pavley State Senate green water bottle. They are here for you. My goal is clearing out everything out of my office in the next few weeks, and so you're part of the solution. I could autograph them. I'm not sure where I would put it on a water bottle. Thank you, Matt, for coming. Also, I wanted to acknowledge two of my fellow legislators are here. Those two will be carrying the ball forward, so your concepts and ideas will generate interest with them, as well as people listening on our webcast. And you can see it's being recorded in the back, and it's live streamed. We are sending out a copy of the agenda and the participants to the heads of the different policy committees in the Assembly and the Senate, who we think will find this of interest and can follow up on some of what we learned here today, the challenges and the opportunities. And that should be helpful as the state moves forward together. We have some challenges, and the big one now that SB 32 has been signed and put into statute is making sure we meet our 2030 targets, whether it's 50% renewable energy or looking at energy efficiency. What kinds of things do we need to do to scale up and make sure that we can come up with technologies that are cost effective and practical and work. So with that, I thought I'd allow Ben Allen and Eduardo Garcia, if they'd like to offer one or two words before we do self-introductions around the room.
Well, I really want
Senator Allen, thank you.
I just want to say how incredibly lucky we have all been in the state of California, and in fact, as human beings, to have had Senator Pavley in her leadership role. She is an absolute legend. She has an incredible record, and she has left a legacy for all of us to work off of, both in terms of her original AB 32 and then most recently the great success of SB 32, keeping the ball moving. Senator Pavley has been at the absolute center of California's efforts to take on a global leadership role, and it's making impact all over the world. Other countries are looking to us, looking at all the innovations that we have been pushing, looking at the incredible private and public partnerships that have come out of her legislation. And I just want to say personally, I've enjoyed serving with her a tremendous amount, both on the Natural Resources and Water Committee and also on this Senate Select Committee. She's going to be very much missed. I know she'll still be around and will still be engaged.
And I have your personal phone number.
Yes, and most importantly, she knows my parents, so that's the most
always good.
That's the most dangerous thing. But we are going to be we are very committed to continuing the work of Senator Pavley and keeping California at the forefront of the global conversation on climate change. And so I'm really looking forward to this conversation. I'm looking forward to future hearings, having a number of you up in Sacramento to talk about ways that we can move forward. The continual challenge, of course, is how do we maintain our environmental leadership momentum while also doing right by those people from all over the state who may be struggling, who may have economic challenges? How do we marry economic growth with our sustainability goals and our greenhouse gas goals? And how do we make sure that everyone all across the state of California feels as though they're coming along on this journey with us? And that's a great challenge. That's certainly something that we've continued to struggle with, but I think have overcome in the state legislature. But it's our constant battle in the legislature.
Thank you very much, Senator Allen. Perfect segue to Assembly Member Eduardo Garcia, who gets the award among members of who traveled the furthest to come to this hearing today. Eduardo and I sort of bonded, if you will, at the Paris summit, and he was there as a freshman in the State Assembly, seeing for himself the global interest in this subject. As you know, we joined forces together this past year. SB 32 wouldn't have passed with the good work of Eduardo Garcia and Speaker Rendon in the Assembly, and he authored AB 197, whose contents really reflect on what Senator Allen just said, to make sure that these climate policies benefit all Californians regardless of economic levels. So, Eduardo, thank you very much for coming, and perhaps a few words, and then we're going to go around the room real quickly.
I'll be brief. Thank you, Senator and Senator Allen, for the invitation. As Speaker Rendon said once, all good stories start in Paris, and I was happy to have joined you and the rest of the delegation to come back very enthusiastic about the opportunities for our disadvantaged communities in California as we apply our sustainability climate change policies. And I represent a district that is reflective of many economic challenges, public health challenges, but also a tremendous amount of opportunities. Where 360 days, the sun is shining, the wind is blowing, and an abundance of geothermal energy. And really, it will be through our policies and technology that we're able to actually capture and maximize those opportunities to meet California's goals. So I'm happy to be here. Senator, again, thank you for your leadership on these issues, and we certainly, we're going to miss you. But
we're passing the torch.
It took one person, to take the lead. It's going to take about 5 or 10 of us in the Assembly to really pick up the ball and run with it. And again, that's a depiction of really the leadership that you put forward. And but we're excited to keep the ball moving forward. And again, thank you for the opportunity to be here and be part of this discussion.
Thank you very much, Eduardo Garcia. So I thought we'd briefly go around the room, and then I'm going to turn over this meeting to Kara Horowitz from UCLA Law School Director, who will let you know what the ground rules are, and she will be moderating this discussion this morning. It is a discussion. So brief introduction from each person, maybe name and title, and one thing that you're looking forward in us addressing today at this conference. And thank you very much, Carla, for coming all the way down from Los Angeles. We appreciate it.
My pleasure. Thank you for having me. Good morning, everyone. I'm Carla Peterman, Commissioner with the California Public Utilities Commission. I am the assigned commissioner for our transportation electrification and energy storage work, and I've had the privilege of working on both of those topics for the last 4 years. So thank you to the committee for including the commission in this forum. And what I'm looking forward to getting suggestions and around how to make our planned procurement most successful. We've done a tremendous amount in battery storage for transportation and for stationary storage over the last 10 years, but many of those projects are just going into the ground now. And so I'm looking forward to hearing from those who are working in the industry about how we can do the deployment faster next time and what additional support you may need as you're trying to make these projects operational.
Perfect. Great to model that. Yes.
Hi, I'm Kent Leacock with Proterra. I'm the Director of Government Relations, Regulatory Relations, and Public Policy. Proterra is a manufacturer of a 40-foot battery electric, all-battery transit bus. I guess the thing I'm most looking forward to is hearing ideas on transportation electrification infrastructure. That is one of the challenges that we're starting to encounter across the country, and hopefully we'll have ideas here that will allow us to model best practices and help spread it across the U.S.
Thank you very much for coming. Daniel?
Morning. My name is Daniel Witt. I'm the Manager of Business Development Policy for Tesla, Tesla Motors and Tesla Energy. We make a number of vehicles out of our factory based in Fremont, California. I'm very excited about the introduction next year of the Tesla Model 3, which will be our first entrance into the mass market, which we hope will have tremendous effects on the adoption of electric vehicles here in the state of California and beyond. Similarly, we're helping, along with several of the other members in this room, to really push both distributed energy resources as well as utility-grade solutions for stationary storage here in the state, partially in direct response to what we've seen out of the Aliso Canyon issue. So more than anything else, I'm very excited about the folks we have around the table today. This is a great selection of folks from the industry and the policy arena. Truly excited to hear how we can get these technologies into the hands of every Californian.
Thank you. Sean, from the Climate Center at UCLA Law School.
Good morning, everybody. I'm Sean Hecht. I'm the co-executive director of the Emmett Institute on Climate Change and the Environment here at UCLA Law, along with my co-director, Kara Horowitz, who you'll be hearing a lot from later today. I'm really excited to be here and to welcome you all to UCLA, and really very grateful for the work that Senator Pavley and the other members here in the room have put in. Today I'm really excited to hear about new technological developments and advancements in the area. A lot of the work that we do is around trying to assist with understanding the policy architecture that's necessary to push new developments into the market and to help to solve problems through regulatory strategies. And so I'm excited to hear some of the work that's being done so we can think more concretely about that in this area.
And we'll go ahead and go over to Manal with Advanced Microgrid Solutions.
Good morning, everyone. Manal Yamut, Vice President of Policy and Markets at Advanced Microgrid Solutions, or AMS. AMS is an aggregator of distributed storage resources, and primarily we aggregate them for utility grid support. We are building quite a bit in this area. We have about 120 megawatts under contract and under active development in Southern California today. I guess what I'm most interested and excited about discussing is I'd really like to highlight the potential, somewhat surprising potential, for distributed resources to provide transmission and distribution services, and some of the work that we've been doing with SCE and like many of the others in this room. There's a real potential for distributed resources to do things that we never thought possible, and there's quite a few barriers we need to tackle to make that happen, but it's a really exciting time, and I'm really excited to be a part of it and to be here today.
Thank you very much. And next to you is Tom Soto. Nice to see you again, Tom.
Nice to see you, Senator. Thank you for hosting us this morning. My name is Tom Soto, and I'm a longtime investor in this space from the early days of companies like Fuel Cell Energy and Craton and Northern Power Systems, to having my own alternative fuels company that was the largest provider of ethanol to the MTA for years, called Cabrillo Fuels, and continue to invest in this space. Some of my companies include Propel Alternative Fuels, Cabbage.com, Gazelle.com, Revolution Foods, for those of you that may have heard of that, and Green Wave Technologies. And I really enjoy the idea of having a heavy regulatory framework that helps to define the parameters for ensuring an element of de-risking an investment, because we know that there are statutes that call for these mandates. Similar to the success that we saw with the acid rain provision with the Chicago futures, we continue to see these models, especially with our cap and trade and so forth. So I'm looking forward to a discussion that most abundantly will begin to address how we are able to integrate the diverse communities that we're all familiar with into. I've been doing this for 30 years, and I hopefully have a reputation of embracing that ethic and trying to be an effective advocate in that respect, and believe that unless we have that inclusion, the next step of Sustainability 2.0 will be difficult. Finally, I'd just like to add to Fran, thank you so much for all the leadership that you've provided in the time that you've been serving in the state legislature. Fran and I have known each other for a really long time, and
I know his
in fact, when you got elected, I took her Coastal Commission spot for a number of years, and then she served with my mother, the late Senator Soto, for many years as well. And then finally, I'd just like to acknowledge that before there was an Eduardo and a Fran, you know, I cut my teeth in this space in environmental justice with Tom Hayden. You know, I was Tom's political director for many years, he and James, and the integration between his vision working with Caesar and the farm workers in Dolores, say in the 1988-89 Great Boycott, and then using that resource to support mothers of East LA, for example, on the East LA prison in the Vernon incinerator. These are things that hadn't been done, and he was such a visionary in that respect, and to be able to take that and translate it into an effective legislative function was a true success. And when Eduardo says it's going to take 5 or 10 of us to do what Fran did, you know, imagine doing what Fran did in 1986 with Prop 65 or the vote to close Rancho Seco with folks like Bernie Richter in the state legislature. These were true challenges of which he was able to overcome and effectively change the rules of the game. So, you know, I just want to make sure that we acknowledge the fact that in his passing, he has left his mark on civil rights, environmental justice, and an improved quality of life for the people of California. So thank you.
Thank you, Tom, and perfectly timed. I've just been reading about his death of 2 days ago, and the Senate itself is mourning our loss, and he was involved till the end in our policies. SB 32 was the last one he was involved in that I know of. Next to you, Andrew Meyer from Swell.
Thank you.
That's a great name.
Thank you. Yeah, lovely to be in California. Swell Energy, right by the Pacific. Andrew Meyer, Swell Energy. We are a residential storage developer and aggregator. We work with utilities like Southern California Edison to develop residential storage programs that bring their homeowners into the distributed grid. We are going to install about 3,000 home batteries in Orange County through a program with Edison, and looking forward to many more, hopefully. Today, I'm looking forward to hearing about how we all think from government perspective, academic, industry, utility perspective, how consumers can be part of this framework that we're all helping to create with distributed clean energy. And very quickly, I want to say thank you to UCLA Law School, where I attended for a semester, and I had a great class with Sean Hecht. I'm very humbled to be on a panel with you.
What grade did you get?
I think I got, I don't know, don't tell them.
All right. Sorry about that, I couldn't resist. John Pizzell, welcome, CalSTART, and John's been part of this journey for many years, so thank you for coming.
Senator, thank you so much for inviting me. CalSTART's a nonprofit organization representing 160 companies that are involved in all aspects of the clean transportation sector. Senator, I just want to thank you so much for your efforts. It's an honor to be here at your last hearing. I won't say anything more. Won't compare you to John Muir, so we'll just move on. But I will just say that Senator Allen, Assemblyman Garcia, as fast as we are moving and as tough as our regulations seem, we need to move even faster. Gasoline and diesel consumption in the state has grown over the last 5 years steadily. So we're heading actually in the wrong direction. So that's what I hope for today, is that we can start thinking about the ideas to reverse that and really start moving faster in the right direction.
Thank you, John. And next to John is Ann Smart, Government Relations Director with ChargePoint.
Thank you, Senator. Yes, I'm the Director of Government Relations and Regulatory Affairs for ChargePoint. We are the largest network of EV charging stations. We make both level 2 and DC fast chargers for all verticals from home to commercial charging. We have 30,800 ports across the country, and we're growing very quickly. I'm excited to be here today because I think a lot of the issues that we face in the charging station industry overlap with the storage industry. I think we copy and paste each other's bills all the time on competition and issues around the future barriers for our industry. So I look forward to hearing where we may have overlap and see what we can do next session.
Thank you. Next up, Karen Butterfield with STEM.
Thank you, Fran. I'm Karen Butterfield with STEM. I lead the commercial organization at STEM. And I joined a little over 2 years ago after a run in energy efficiency and solar. When I joined, we had about 40 sites installed. We're cresting 400 now, so 2 years, 40 to 400. We had about 30 employees. We're 130 employees today in 2 years, so you can just feel the growth in the industry. And the two things I'd like to do today or learn about today, one, sort of the debunking of the energy storage and electrification industries. You know, when you get in a fast-growing industry, people say, "Oh, well, I thought," or "Well, I thought," "I didn't know," and it's really important to try to loop all this together so that we can bring everybody up to what's happening today. Second thing is, thank you very much for your service, Fran, and I'd love to hear a little bit more about how you did it.
All right, Eric. Thank you for coming from Southern California Edison.
Good morning. My name is Eric Takayasu, and I am the Director of Electric System Planning and Modernization at Southern Cal Edison. So I have the unique opportunity to work on very interesting work around how to prepare our system for more distributed resources, how to maximize the value of them. So I'm very interested in not just the challenges and opportunities, but all the really great ideas that are going to come out of discussions like this, so we could be better informed about what we need to do on our system to prepare for the future. So I really appreciate the opportunity. Thank you.
Thank you very much for coming. And go ahead, next to you.
Thank you. I'm Candace Yu with Mercedes-Benz Energy. We are a company under Daimler, and we make lithium-ion batteries for EVs and for stationary storage applications. I'm really excited to be here. Really looking forward to hearing thoughts about longer-term policy framework for energy storage. Thanks.
All right. And you're sitting next to the right person, right? I just had the pleasure of visiting Sonnen just a couple of weeks ago. So welcome, Olaf.
Yeah, hello, good morning. Olaf Lohr, Director of Business Development from Sonnen. We had the pleasure of having Senator Pavley in our office here in North Hollywood. We made a dedication to be in Southern California and roll out residential energy storage in our sunny state here. We're really excited to be here to pave the way with many of the folks who are in the room here. The interesting thing really is we've been able to accomplish bringing clean energy to many parts of Germany where we have half the sunshine of here in California. I just came from a very fantastic trip from Vermont, the sunshine state of Vermont, where we've implemented energy storage in conjunction with other modern technology to create net zero mobile homes. And this is really an example where we have been able to implement clean and affordable energy for the small people, not just for the few first movers that have extra money in their pockets. And this is really straight out of our mission to bring clean and affordable energy to everybody. And I think today is a perfect venue. We're paving the way. We're bringing awareness to the public. I believe the technology is there today already. So I think the policy has to catch up. Public awareness has to catch up. And I totally have to agree with John. We really have to pick up the pace. And many people still today think, this is technology that will be here maybe in 5 years, then so call me back in 5 or 10 years when prices come down. And but really, we are here in the room and we're able to say the technology is here. It's not just for a few or for the industry or commercial, it's for everybody. And this is what we're here for, and to bring it forward fast.
All right. And right next to you, is it Shomik?
I'll spare you. Yeah, Shomik.
Thank you.
My name is Shomik Dutta. I'm the Chief Revenue Officer of Romeo Power. We design, engineer, and manufacture electric vehicle battery packs, lithium-ion battery packs for electric vehicles, consumers, and for households. We're building a 100,000 square foot manufacturing facility right here in Los Angeles, which is very exciting.
Where is that?
We are depending on the beauty contest that you'll help us run, Senator, I hope. But we're looking at Vernon as one of our areas. But one of the things I'm most excited to learn about.
That's the mayor's office groaning.
If I can get a call return, I'd love to. I'd love to hear a little bit more about ideas for how the state government can use its commuting power and balance sheet to help lower some of the astronomical startup costs for lithium-ion to ensure a very competitive marketplace.
And someone who can help you do that, Nancy Sutley.
I'm Nancy Sutley. I'm the Chief Sustainability and Economic Development Officer for the Los Angeles Department of Water and Power, and we're excited to be here. We're in the midst of a very significant transformation of pretty much everything we do in growing our renewable energy portfolio and meeting all of the state and our city sustainability goals. And one of the more interesting developments is the City Council motion to have us figure out how to get to 100% clean energy. So storage will play a big role in how we do that, and there's a lot we need to understand about how that will work with the grid, as well as a number of people said, the urgency of getting more electrification of our transportation system to reduce the contribution of greenhouse gas emissions, as well as helping to solve our local air quality problems.
Very good, thank you. And we'll skip Eduardo for now. Rob, welcome. And Rob's worn the Air Resources Board hat, now with the Energy Commission. So thank you very much for coming down from Sacramento.
Thank you, Senator. It's a pleasure to be here and a pleasure to be with so many of you. Some of you have known for so many years. The Energy Commission is the state's planning and policy agency for energy, but also has a broad portfolio of programs related to energy that includes transportation as well as the grid side. And I think that it's important to highlight the fact that one of the things that the Energy Commission tries to contribute to this is doing the research that helps move the technology that we need to scale up the topics we're going to talk about today. And so it's research and then investment to get it out of the box. And
your EPIC program and others.
And others. And the ARF VTP program, which is the one no one remembers and can spell. But that's $100 million for advanced vehicles and fuels. I began my environmental career at the Air Resources Board at the time that the first market signals were adopted in the form of regulation, keying off of Tom's comments. And that was when the mandate for zero emission technology was put into regulation by the Air Resources Board, and it's been quite a journey since then.
Matt Peterson, Sustainability Officer, City of Los Angeles, and getting ready for a birthday.
Thank you, Fred.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Well, I guess I just say up front, I'll have to leave soon because I've got to represent the mayor at City Hall to recognize some good food champions, including those bringing healthy foods to low-income and disadvantaged communities. So I'll say a couple extra things in the introduction. Senator Pavley and I met in 1992 when she was a teacher in Agoura Hills, and I worked for Tony Bielenson, running his campaign. But you know, one of the exciting things now, being the mayor's chief sustainability officer in the city of LA, is to be able to implement those programs that we all work so hard to fight for in the legislature. So AB 32, of course, and when I was running Global Green, we asked Senator Pavley to introduce the Community Empowerment Amendment that led to Kevin De Leon's SB 535. And now we're actually implementing CARB funding to bring EV car sharing to disadvantaged communities throughout Los Angeles. So it's gratifying to see that progress that we're making, and of course we have much farther to go. That's why the Mayor Eric Garcetti released a sustainable city plan, setting targets including 80% GHG reductions by 2050. And of course, with the Department of Water and Power getting off of coal by 2025, that's a big chunk of those emission reductions. But we have a lot farther to go, and we need to figure out what's that pathway. What are those pathways to get there? And we know whether it's the mayor's direction to get off of fossil fuels after Aliso Canyon and study how we do that, in the council's motion for 100% clean energy. Those are critical pieces. We've announced a pilot with a fire station to provide critical backup power for a solar plus storage system, and we want that to become more the norm throughout the city, and we'll be announcing more pilots with the department soon. But you know, whether it's Aliso or climate change, local or global issues that mobilize us to action, we do need these broad, comprehensive strategic partnerships with industry, government, and the community. And you know, there's a pot of funding that just got allocated, a big chunk for Fresno and a big chunk for LA, the Transformative Climate Communities Program. And it's really an opportunity for us to dig in and find a project to work together here in Los Angeles that demonstrates a lot of things we're talking about here today, and see how we can transform a neighborhood while demonstrating the types of strategic partnerships and innovations that we need, not just in the city, but across the state. So with that, I just want to thank you, Senator Pavley, and look forward to our continued partnership in your remaining months and in the future.
Continue to cross. Sure. Thank you very much, Matt, for attending. Eileen Tutt with the California Electric Transportation Coalition.
Thank you, Senator Pavley. Eileen Tutt. The California Electric Transportation Coalition is a nonprofit that's been around for over 20 years and is committed to electrification of the transportation sector, not just light-duty vehicles, but also our ports, trucks, buses. Thanks, Ken. And I guess for me, I would like to talk a little bit about today, I would like to hear a little bit about the recognition that connecting the transportation sector to the grid has so many benefits, and I think the topic of this hearing is perfect. It's the better utilizing of renewable resources, storage, all those things can be enhanced with electrification of the transportation sector. And when we do electrify the transportation sector, all consumers, everybody who uses electricity benefits. It's not just people who drive electric vehicles. So I think there's a lack of understanding around the physical properties of the grid relative to conventional fuel and the benefits of attaching a vehicle to the grid. And then the other thing I want to just talk about, and I think John brought it up, John Bozell, is we do need to somehow get the message out to consumers, because we talk about how many people are buying these cars, but it's only 3% of the new vehicle market, which means 97% are still buying conventional vehicles. So we need to get to more people, and I think one of the ways to do that is to have more certainty around the public sector investment. That means incentives. We need to find revenue to ensure that these incentives for trucks, buses, and cars are consistent and reliable instead of this stop and go, stop and start, insufficient funding for the incentive programs, particularly as we start to electrify the goods and people movement. So for me, that's a priority. I do want to shout out to the state. You know, the Energy Commission and the legislature has done a lot, but if we're going to get to where we need to be, a lot more is going to be needed. So that's my top priority next year.
All right. So we're going to turn it over to our fearless moderator. You have your work cut out for you. So we went on a little longer than I wanted on the introductions, but I thought it was important to hear the background for each of us to understand where people were coming from. So I'm turning it over to Kara Horwitz. She's the co-executive director of the Emmett Institute on Climate Change. Proud to serve on that board. Doing a tremendous job here at UCLA and UCLA Law School, and the other departments at UCLA are very much involved in sustainability issues. So take it away, Kara.
Thank you, Senator. So as the Senator said, I'm Kara Horwitz. I'm here at UCLA. We're tremendously honored to be hosting this field hearing today, so thank you so much to the Senator and the other committee members and to their staff for helping make this happen. I have the unenviable task, as the Senator suggested, of trying to keep us on task today. It's clear from things that have been said around the room already and from the work that's been done over the past, more than 10 years in the legislature by the Senator and others that California is committed to leading the way to address the problem of climate change and to doing so in a way that benefits all communities around California. But I think there are really still some significant open questions about how to scale up the solutions that will allow us to achieve those goals. And that's really, as we all know, the topic of today's hearing. We have some of the key public and private sector voices around the table, and my job is to elicit as much good conversation from you guys as we can. This is intended to be a collaborative discussion among problem solvers. So it's in that spirit that we should proceed. I'll give you some ground rules. So the discussion today is going to be divided into essentially two segments organized around the technologies that we want to scale up. The first segment is going to be focused on grid storage technologies, and the second is going to be focused on transportation questions, so energy storage for transportation and other ways to reduce petroleum usage from the grid, including alternative fuels. I think our agenda had this organized as 3 topics. Obviously, the dividing lines between these things are imperfect, as Eileen and others were saying. They're really useful things to be gained from connecting these conversations. But for now, we're going to, given the people who are in the room today, we'll try to divide first into grid and then into transportation questions. We're going to start each of these 2 segments with 1 or 2, hopefully somewhat provocative questions from instigators who have been tapped ahead of time. Hopefully you know who you are, and I'll be calling on you. And then if you'd like to join the conversation, I'll ask you to turn your placard on its side to signal that you'd like to make a comment, and I'll be keeping a queue. Each of the segments of the conversation is roughly going to take about a half an hour, maybe a little bit less. And then at 11:30 or so, we'll be turning to the public comment section of the hearing. And for those of you who are here from the public, welcome. I believe that there is a sign-up sheet circulating around the room that will be brought to me around 11:30. So if you'd like to make a public comment, please find that sheet and sign up on sign your name. One final announcement before we jump in. Professor Rajit Gad of UCLA, who runs a Smart Grid Energy Center lab here at the university, thank you, Rajit, has generously offered to lead a tour of his Smart Grid Energy Center lab here at UCLA just after the close of the hearing. So if you or your staff or others would like to join that tour, there's also a sheet being circulated for that tour, and that would likely start around 12:30. In his lab, he's exploring new technologies in smart EV charging, distributed solar generation, and others. Okay, so with that, let's jump into the first topic, which is energy storage for the grid. It's incredibly important to figure out how to integrate renewable energy sources into the grid at high rates of penetration, as we all know, especially important after last year's catastrophic Aliso Canyon natural gas leak. We're going to turn to Andrew Meyer, co-founder of Swell, to kick us off with his perspective on where we're moving on the topic of ramping up energy storage for the grid, with, again, hopefully a short, provocative instigator comment, and then I'll start taking a cue for other comments.
Thanks, Cara. I guess one thing to note is that the premise of scaling our clean energy future, I think we can assume, and I would propose that the technology's there, so there's going to be incremental improvement. There's going to be cost reductions, but the technology's there. It's kind of like for solar generation, you have PV, photovoltaics, and sure, we talk about energy efficiency gains and cost reductions, but no one's saying, where is the revolutionary solar generation technology we've all been waiting for? We have it. And it's just a matter of regulations and business models coming into place. And I think in battery storage for the grid, we're there, I would propose. And now it's a question of what's holding us back from scaling. The way I look at it is there's a lot of innovation to do, but there's also a lot of barriers to eliminate. And so I guess my question would be, what are some of the key barriers to enabling adoption by end consumers is one way of framing it, I think, that could be interesting. And I have one thought on that, so maybe kick it off.
That's fine.
It's been a wonderful experience speaking with utilities in the context of procurement proceedings, and Carla, I'd love to speak about that as well. But outside the context of procurement proceedings, in solar we've seen widespread adoption or increasing penetration, not because of developers going to utilities and proposing solar programs with end customers necessarily, but because of things like net metering, so a tariff that enables end customers to benefit and to benefit the grid. I would love to see a discussion around tariffs for energy storage that sort of incentivize end customers to adopt energy storage in a manner that, and dispatched in a manner that would benefit the grid. That's an example of a concept I would be proposing to discuss, sort of what can we do to enable end customer pull to scale the adoption of energy storage for the grid.
Thank you, Andrew. So reactions to that as a question, do you think that's the right area of inquiry? Do you agree that the technology is there and we really should be talking about barriers to consumer adoption? And reactions to Andrew's particular suggestion for removing those barriers?
I think Karen was thinking of putting up her.
I think I saw Manal first and then Karen. Yeah.
Okay.
Sure. I have a feeling we'll be saying similar things, so that's probably just fine. So I agree that the technology is there. I mean, what we've seen from AMS, and I think that many of the other folks around the room have probably seen, is that the real innovation in this sector has been around the business model. And that's where the most work needs to be done. So it would be interesting to have a conversation around rates. We are on the commercial industrial side where we have time of use rates. Ironically, they don't quite correlate to what the grid needs. So that's a conversation that needs to happen over the next several years. But what I'd really like to highlight in terms of barriers are a handful of things. One of the challenges for widespread adoption of behind all storage, but particularly behind the meter storage, is that the storage device needs to be able to do multiple things. And it's one of the things that I know the Commission has been working on quite a bit. Storage devices are what are referred to as multi-use resources. They're able to do 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, or 9 things. And a lot of the companies around this table have been able to monetize and finance these assets because they can do several things at once. Unfortunately, our regulatory framework has yet to move quite as quickly as the business model has. And so at the PUC and at the ISO, there's quite a few things that can be done and need to be discussed around how do you stack values for these resources? How do you provide long-term certainty? Many of us around this room are very fortunate that we have utility contracts that give us 10 years of revenue, but that is not going to make the entire industry. And so what do we have beyond, outside of procurement, to the point made by Andrew? Thank you. Storage, solar, for example, had SGIP to start, then had CSI, now has net energy metering. It also has a federal ITC. It also has a property tax exemption in California, and there's also 50% RPS. right? And that's really, that combination of policies really spurred solar deployment in California. When we look at storage, we're very fortunate to have Commissioner Peterman's procurement goal, our procurement mandate, and we have SGIP, and that's it. And so we have a really long way to go to provide the long-term certainty that's needed to really go from a few companies to several companies in a robust industry like we've seen on the solar side.
Thank you, Manal. Karen.
I concur with all that. I want to break it down a little bit more into customer adoption, like Andrew was mentioning. Customers are adopting storage at a pretty rapid pace now. This is behind the meter storage. So here at the university or at the local Walmart or one of these locations. And primarily they're adopting storage because it's cost effective, it's a business proposition. In the government sector, a lot of times they give you a little extra green points, if you will, trying to do it for a little bit, maybe a little thinner economics, but the economics still have to be positive. So as Manal was pointing out, we're here to generate positive economics for the customer. And that means we do have to stack these values. We can't just take one of them and they're, you know, like Manal said, 10 or 12 or 13. What we don't have right now is we don't have price signals. You know, whether you say it's a tariff or whether you say it's the Cal ISO market, you know, evolution, we don't have a price signal that says here's when you should charge it and here's when you should discharge that battery for the benefit of the grid, for the benefit of the building, the customer, and so on. And then the second and third things that I think we need, there may be an opportunity to state this later, but one is these sort of outdated or trying to impose cost effectiveness tests from other technologies onto storage, when storage really doesn't look exactly like this other thing. It's a generator and it's a load and it's a fast responder and so on. So those type of things we really need to dive into. And then finally, to gain velocity, we need to target these permitting obstacles. You know, when we go into a new community, we have to come up with a new way to permit. When we go into, you know, a city or a county, then they want to go through this same process. And we've seen other technologies cut through that by having state support for a standardization of permitting.
Thanks, Karen. Matt, I see that your flag is up, and I know you have to leave. I don't know how urgently you have to leave. Okay, so I'm going to let Matt, if people don't object, jump the queue, in part because I know you have to go, and in part because Karen just raised an interesting question about permitting barriers at the local level. So why don't you just jump in?
Yeah, and then Nancy's going to address some of this from the department's perspective. But City of Los Angeles was the first big city in the nation to do a LEED, Silver, or Better private sector green building program. It led to the Cal Green State Building Code. And so we know we have an important role to play, and not just in terms of what happens in a city of over 4 million people, but how do we set the standard that other cities are comfortable following, because we have such a robust building code. Some would say too robust. But the fact is that we're very interested and eager to figure this out together. And so if the industry has ideas on the permitting side, we'd love to sit around the table and talk about what are those barriers. Now, we know there have been some barriers, both real and perceived, with the Department of Water and Power. Nancy will talk to what we're doing there at the utility, but we're trying to figure this out. I mean, how does a utility, with our challenges and opportunities that our largest municipal utility in the country has, how do we take advantage of storage, solar, and an integrated resource, and EVs? I mean, we're clearly moving aggressively towards an electrification of transportation, both for air quality requirements and GHG reductions. We've gone from 600 EV charging stations to over 1,400 in 2 years. We're going from 60 pure battery electrics in the city fleet to nearly 500 in the course of 2 years. These are things we need to figure out quickly. And then what are those communication opportunities, the connected vehicles with battery storage? There are, those EVs are storage opportunities as well as clean transportation. And what's the right price signal that our utility needs to set? And is it separate from solar in our case, or is it integrated, that we want to see that to be an integrated approach? And how does a utility like DWP deal with the third party access to information? How do we get demand response opportunities that are more direct and without expensive fees to pay or protected data and customer relationships? Those are the things that we're grappling with, that we need to figure out how we unlock innovation while continuing to get the utility to continue to evolve and have both a direct customer relationship and have great partnerships with third-party vendors who are providing innovations that the department on its own couldn't unlock. So there's a number of issues that I think we're looking at and excited about. And again, I don't see these as really separate issues. They are separate for now, but they're going to be an integrated set of opportunities with BEVs and demand response and storage and solar and other things I'm sure we haven't anticipated. And just get into then the next dimension of this is autonomous vehicles. I mean, the spectrum of moving of autonomous vehicles is one that's synonymous with EVs. Every manufacturer is looking at electric vehicles really as the platform by which they're going to have autonomous vehicles distributed throughout the city. And then that becomes another factor that we're going to have to put into the mix is how do those autonomous EVs play into both a drain on the grid and an opportunity for demand response. So there's a lot of things we're thinking about at the city that I think are rich for opportunity for further discussion and rolling up our sleeves in the months and years ahead.
I'll be happy so long as the autonomous cars come online before my children start to drive. That's my personal goal. Thanks, Matt. Commissioner Peterman.
Thank you. First of all, I want to acknowledge that how much we have scaled to date and then where the scaling needs to transition. So from 2003 to 2013, our utilities procured 25 megawatts of non-pumped hydro storage. Since 2013, we've approved 630 megawatts of energy storage. So we've seen 25 times the amount of deployment in the last 3 years as a decade before. And that was motivated by the legislation from Assemblymember Skinner and the activities of those around the table. What's been interesting, though, is that the growth we've seen in interest in distributed and customer-side storage, as the comments before have mentioned. And recent legislation, AB 1637 and AB 2868, will increase the amount of distributed and customer-side storage by an additional 700 megawatts. Because those bills both expanded the funding for SCHIP, and we also tweaked the SCHIP program to make it primarily focused on customer-side storage. And then AB 2868 directs the utilities to procure 500 megawatts of distributed and customer-side storage. And I raise those numbers because when we first started working on storage, we were focused largely on the utility scale, transmission level, distribution connected storage. But with companies like STEM and AMS, we've seen the business model play out that you can actually start to have smaller storage. But then the challenge for us as regulators is how do we incentivize distributed generation generally? And there's a different set of issues when you're thinking about how to incentivize consumers than when you think about how to incentivize the utility. I mean, when I incentivize the utility, I just tell them to do it. And they earn money and we're incentivized. Customers, not as easy. And so it's been mentioned that price signals are going to be critical. And first, I want to acknowledge that we are going to move to default time of use pricing in response to AB 327. And it's interesting to hear the comment that the time of use pricing in the commercial sector isn't necessarily incentivizing the behavior we want. So we'd like to see what would that appropriate incentive look like for customers, because we're piloting those programs now. But also, we're doing a lot of modeling and planning. So we have the distribution resource plans that are underway. We have the integrated resource planning. And when I talk to folks in the industry, I say, okay, if we're trying to figure out price signals, we've got to figure out the need, and these modeling efforts are going to do that. And people say they're just not going to happen quick enough. And so it'd be helpful to get feedback about what elements of those planning exercises need to happen faster in order to keep the market momentum, as well as how else can we tackle some of the soft costs. You know, Karen mentioned this, and one of the things we did this year was standardize interconnection for non-exporting storage. It's activities like that, I think, that can help us move faster in terms of the deployment we've already approved. And so interested in that feedback. Thank you.
Does anybody have direct feedback to the commissioner's question on which elements of state planning should be moving faster?
Manal? I'll answer briefly. I think in reference to the integrated resource planning process, which is probably where you hear the most from stakeholders that it's going to take too long. The general concern is that even with the incremental 500 megawatts that came out of the legislature this year, the storage target that the state has is pegged to a 33% renewable portfolio standard. And there is a strong desire from industry to ensure that there's a long-term market signal encouraging utilities to continue doing what Edison's done very well. And so if the IRP takes 4 to 5 years to identify exactly what the mandate should be, and most utilities have already procured up to their 2020 goal, what happens between now and the next 5 years? So that's why as an industry there's been general support for an interim target, a 2030 target for battery storage procurement tied to a 50% RPS. That might be an in-between between today and when the IRP is ready and fully functioning.
Just to thank you, that's helpful. Make one comment about that. In terms of thinking about increasing targets, I'm very interested in what are some no regrets options, because I think one of the challenges, let's remember, storage is the solution for some of our renewable opportunities and challenges. And I would hate for storage to become a problem in itself. And part of that is making sure that we're putting storage where it's actually necessary. And I do think there's more storage that we need, but it's not everywhere and everything. And that is one of the challenges with customer side. Customers, if they don't have the right price signals, we may end up subsidizing technologies in locations that aren't optimal. And so it's a question for the utilities as well as for some of the providers who are on the ground. What are still some clear no regrets needs on the system that we can start deploying targeting storage there, even absent having the IRP finished? And Aliso Canyon, the 65 megawatts that's being installed there is a prime example of a way to target storage to a near-term need.
I wanted to just ask a question on Aliso Canyon. Was that part of legislation, or is that just a Public Utilities Commission priority to roll out? I don't know if people are here from Aliso Canyon, but it's still very topical. We just passed the 1-year anniversary.
So it wasn't directly a part of legislation. We were able to direct staff to issue a resolution to direct the utilities to procure the storage in response to the emergency order. But the ability for us to move fast on that came from the fact that there was a storage procurement framework in place already, which was motivated by legislation. And so it's important to have that framework because
The Skinner bill.
Yeah, the 2514. Because absent because of that, the utilities knew how to procure storage. We knew how to direct them to do it. And so when an emergency came up, we weren't starting from zero. And what's been fascinating is that nearly half of the 630 megawatts that I mentioned that we've directed the utilities to procure came from procurements that happened outside of the formalized energy storage target procurement. What we did was to say, if you're procuring for local needs, if you're procuring for emergency situations, you can count that towards the target. And so what you see is that a policy signal is a signal in itself. Yes, there's procurement that can result from it, but it also just spurs the utilities to think more creatively about how to use this resource elsewhere.
Nancy, you've been very patient. Thanks.
So I'm going to skip over some of this, in part because we are not regulated by the Public Utilities Commission. I'll just leave that there. You are in Los Angeles, and so I think this question. I do think the question about storage, is it storage for storage sake? And I think for looking at it from sort of LADWP's perspective, storage is interesting on its own, but it really is interesting and important for us as we look at all of these, all of the direction that we're getting, both locally and from the state, about how we're going to continue to manage the grid, how are we going to continue to manage to deliver electricity to the bulk of our customers who will not necessarily be interested in storage as an end use. And so thinking about what benefits storage provides and where, I think, are really important questions. There's arguments for storage associated with generation, in part because you have the site already. You don't have to go through the same kind of greenfield permitting that you might need to in other cases. There's certainly arguments around the transmission and distribution system from the technology and technical perspective in terms of the technical benefits that storage provides when we're trying to integrate more renewables. We have had, as you know, pump storage, we've had a huge pump storage project at Castaic that was built to manage the grid when we had a lot of baseload coal and nuclear power coming into Los Angeles. And as we're moving away from that, does that kind of big kind of storage, how do you capture the value of that? How do you capture value at the transmission and distribution system to help us integrate all the renewables, to help us deal with different configurations of even our existing natural gas-fired power plants, and then, of course, trying to meet the questions that we've been asked about getting to 100% clean energy. So I think, we know a lot about the cost side at the moment. I don't know that we know how to capture all the benefits that are associated with storage, and at least on the kind of the utility side of the meter, storage for storage sake is okay, but it doesn't really reflect, I think, the kinds of value that we think there is in storage. And I do think this question of, well, how are we going to get the technology costs down? Who's going to help us to do that? What is that regulatory framework locally as well as statewide that will help to provide us some better, I think, transparency and information about how do we internalize those benefits.
So believe it or not, we're down to our last few minutes on the topic of grid storage. So I'm going to end with Eric and Karen again, quickly if you can. Thank you.
Okay, so I want to sort of reaffirm some of the points made, and I thought they were really great. First of all, I agree Commissioner Peterman's comments that storage is coming, and we procured quite a bit of storage already. One of the things that I think about as far as where the value actually occurred, and it was really up at the higher levels of the grid. So you think about local capacity resource issues in the West LA Basin. We think about the South Orange County reliability issues around San Onofre. So what's more interesting, though, is when we think about storage as a multi-use technology, and we talk about things like price signals, the question is what happens when you get further down into the grid onto the distribution side? And so what we're likely to see there are multiple potential benefits, but also a need to understand how price signals can be matched in such a way that you don't create an issue on one end and solving an issue on the other end. So for solving a problem at the higher levels of the grid, we want to be sure that we still have a reliable system on the distribution side. So I think it provides an opportunity. I agree largely that technology and storage is here, but I think on the grid side we have an opportunity to evolve the grid to the next level, to have the level of visibility, to have the understanding of what happens under high penetration scenarios in the family of other distributed resources. So if we think about some customers will be adopting storage, others will be adopting solar, others will be adopting electric vehicles, and the grid is a dynamically changing and evolving system. So I think that I would really like to see some of these things sort of coming together to help understand how do we maximize the value of these resources. And I think because they're all connected to the grid, we really need to think about it holistically from top to bottom.
Thanks. Well, I have 4 quick items. First of all, on the interconnection effort that you put forth, Commissioner Peterman, thank you. And had this event happened a year ago, I would have probably had that flag up saying, could you do this? Could you focus on this? So that's really awesome. Second, another thank you, the Aliso Canyon message that went to the utilities. And we were able to accelerate 12 megawatt hours onto the grid thanks to Southern California Edison. Our first test for the storage will be on November 10th. That wouldn't have happened had it not been, for that messaging. 2 things to think about, getting back to your question. One is what we refer to as dual participation. So if a customer is in one program, can they be in another? if they're in a demand response program, are they allowed to be in a storage, pool? And this is something that we're working on. I am not an expert in this field, but Anthony over there, Anthony Harrison, is our policy guy, and it's something that we really want to address, because if you start to segment what customers can and can't do, then we're all fighting against each other and not getting the maximum value. And then the second thing to think about, I think, is storage is a non-exporting resource behind the meter. In California, we connect under Rule 21, non-export. So if the solar system is generating electricity and it's going up to the grid in an exporting interconnection, and we're at the same site, we have a lot of problems with that, right? Because we can't export while they're generating and so on. So I don't know exactly what the solutions are, but I think if we can focus on a couple of things like that, it will open up the opportunity to take the full benefit of storage. Thank you very much for having us.
And Senator Pavley pointed out Tom's flag is up, and I now see Olaf's has been raised. So let's make these the last two on grid storage.
Even shorter.
And even shorter. Thank you.
Thanks, Cara. I just want to say that if with all the great leadership that we've seen with this PUC, Carla and Picker in particular, that's the difference between being an appointee and being a leader. These are things that are leadership-based functions. And all of that said, California is a wildly diverse community. And the regulatory framework under the multi-jurisdictional aspect that PUC has makes it even more difficulty for focus to be drawn in this particular little teeny tiny slice of the life of the PUC. So we don't want to discount the option that Nancy just explained, where you have this focused high density function of a municipal utility that is able to, as implausible as it may sound, actually get things done because it has a much more compressed capacity to do so through the very limited regulatory framework that it has. Although it is very heavy regulatory, it's much less than the entire state. And in my experience, we have had great success in terms of initiating meaningful change on a implementation basis by being able to have leadership of the council and the mayor to impose upon the commissioners and the senior staff to get this done. Now you're dealing with an agency that, by the way, has never been familiar and never wanted to have any association with quanting out the future or conservation and so forth. That has changed beginning, maybe 15, 20 years ago as the era of Mary Nichols and David Freeman came on. But there are ways of moving into this. And the one example I'll cite that maybe some of us can remember was the sewer ordinance of 1989, where we basically forced upon the planning and development community that you were not going to develop new homes, new residential, new commercial, or renovations without implementing a conservation standard that was going to reduce water consumption by 25%, which, by the way, wasn't necessarily being done because of water conservation needs in the midst of a drought. It was because our Hyperion sewage treatment facility was discharging unlawfully, 260 million gallons of raw sewage every now and then. So we had to reduce the water going into it. But that was a hugely effective tool to lower demand and use of water, which basically fell into the Mono Lake litigation. It helped to bring up to date water conservation standards. The same can be true here if we have members of the city council and the mayor propose standards on meaningful renovation and new developments that have this integrated function that could work with DWP to make it happen. And that, by the way, is true of SCAPA and all the other municipal utilities if they're willing to follow. But those are the organizations that we from the investment community like to watch and see how they behave.
Thanks, Tom. And Olaf, with apologies, I'll ask you to be very brief.
Yeah, that's fine. So I just really want to hold up the flag for residential energy storage because it seems like on the commercial side we have pretty good rates in place that encourage storage. We have depreciation schedules in place. We have other financing in place. But on the residential side, we don't really have a rate that encourages energy storage. We have from the Public Utility Commission, at first we had the signal that we would really change drastically the net metering policy, which hasn't happened, so that put in quite a bit of insecurity into the market. The holdup of SCHIP for a whole year has been a tremendous blow to energy storage, especially here in California. And I kind of have to disagree a little bit with Eric. I really see energy storage also bubbling up from the bottom up, from the customer side. So there is a tremendous benefit, and we've shown that in other areas, that distributed energy storage has even greater value than centralized energy storage. So I really think we cannot forget this. Also, LADWP, I really encourage you to get the permitting, move along. If you ask 100 solar contractors if they would like to put in a battery in Los Angeles, probably 99 of them would say hell no, because it's been very, 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 very difficult to do that. So we hope that permitting will be put in place, that this is going to be much easier down the road, and we urgently need this today.
Thank you. And with that, this is tremendously helpful discussion, at least I found it. So one of the reasons I love doing these things here at UCLA is because it's my own personal seminar in these issues. So thank you all for educating me and educating all of us. With that, we'll turn to the second cohort of issues, which is, broadly speaking, how to reduce petroleum use from transportation, including through energy storage for vehicles and through other forms of alternative fuels. I see the transportation world transforming every time I'm on the road. I don't know if any of you had an opportunity on the UCLA campus this morning to notice our new fleet of zero-emission campus buses. There are strong policies in California, including the low carbon fuel standard and some policies in SB 350 from the last legislative session, and many others that are leading us in the right direction. But as I think John challenged us in his opening remarks, we know that we can't meet our climate goals in California without significantly further reducing transportation emissions. So that's what we're going to talk about for the next 25 minutes or so. I'm going to turn to two instigators for this portion of the discussion. One is Rob Oglesby from the CEC, and Shamik has also agreed to start us off with a provocative question from Romeo Power. Thanks.
I can't wait for the provocative question. I'll start by talking about the challenges that have faced zero-emission transportation, and observe that we have remaining challenges that are daunting, but not nearly as daunting as the challenges that presented themselves when the zero-emission vehicle mandate was adopted. It's been 26 years. So in 1990, if you think about your cell phone and how enormous it was in 1990, this was the type of technology that the Air Resources Board was looking at when it looked forward at a future that would have zero-emission transportation options. Hydrogen fuel cells were on the horizon as well. But it was most immediately envisioned in the summer of 1990 that electric vehicles would play a significant role. At that point of time, range was a critical limitation on the ability to deal with the mass and the storage you needed to achieve to have transportation. We've made progress in range, incredible progress in range. That seems to be less of a concern than it ever was, and it's getting better all the time. The charging network. Where are people going to charge? It was envisioned that all the charging was going to be at home. That's still an important place to have charging available, but we've invested millions and millions of dollars to establish a charging network throughout the state to enable mobility between cities. And also, increasingly so, to enable the electric vehicle fleet to play a role with the grid, particularly in addressing the overgeneration that renewable energy brings to the grid. We talked about how to deal with the life cycle of a large number of batteries that be used to power the transportation. And we still don't have that really emerge as a huge problem, but second use, recycling, and ultimately end of life of batteries is something that's a challenge that we will come to, even if we're not there in large scale now. But the one challenge that remains, and there's been improvement along with other advanced technologies, but the one that remains daunting is the cost. We're talking about lots of subsidies that have been invested to reduce the cost of this technology, both on the charging side and on the vehicle side. And so my question that I think hope leads into your question is what can policymakers do to remove barriers that would reduce the costs?
Hi, everyone. I thought it might be useful to walk you through the business model of lithium-ion batteries, because I think that can help shape our understanding of why costs are so high, and then we can lead into a discussion of what policy tools are in our portfolio to deal with them. The lithium, and I'm new to the space, I'm about a month in, so forgive a very high-level introduction here, but the business is extraordinarily uncompetitive. You have 3 suppliers of lithium-ion batteries in Korea. You have Panasonic, LG, and Samsung that are making cylindricals, which is what we'll use. Panasonic has an exclusivity agreement with Tesla, which now leads us to 2 suppliers. So you have oligopolistic pricing amongst 2 suppliers that will only respond to scale. So now think about startups and encouraging competition of buyers of lithium ion and our ability to lower price. It's extraordinarily limited. So if policymakers want to avoid a lack of competition downstream amongst those who are packaging those lithium ion batteries, we have to address the core problem here. The core problem is that the pricing power, we have limited pricing power until we achieve scale. And on top of that, our ability to access capital requires riskier bets from guys like Tom, who are going to look at our R&D ability, our engineering ability, and make a pretty nebulous bet, let's face it, on your ability to do something with your BMS, something with your thermal, to create something so compelling that the further downstream market can't ignore it. So what that means, I think, is that the state government needs to either figure out a way to mimic the scale purchasing power somehow, if that may create other market distortions that you guys haven't factored in. But if there's a way to mimic the scale purchasing of a company like Tesla, it would allow startups to take advantage of the lower costs, the biggest cost driver that we face, which is the raw inputs of the lithium-ion cells, and to help us get through our certification processes, our free trade zones, our tax holidays, and anything else that can help us lower the cost of deployment. The other part of this business model that's complicated is once you purchase your lithium-ion cells, do your designing, your engineering, your testing, you have at least 2 to 3 year runway before you can actually sell to OEMs. You're going to engage in prototype agreements, which take about a year, a beta agreement, and then a supplier agreement with an OEM. The supplier agreement phase is the only time an OEM will actually, an automobile purchaser will actually step in and help you finance the costs of your tooling, the costs of your procurement. And those are, when you think about it from a market perspective, investors are very reluctant to engage until that end stage. And so if you're going to have competition in the space, you either need someone that is so extraordinarily well capitalized and willing to take early bets that they can help you enter, or find a solution in the state and federal government to help lower the costs of entry so that you have more competition downstream.
Thanks. So we'll run this segment the same as the prior one. Reactions to Rob's invitation or Shomik's invitation to discuss those issues. Tom.
So we're dealing with a historical model that is really has been abusive of subsidies. And the difficulty of dislodging that in favor of where we need to go for the sake of the planet and all of our communities is nearly an impossible task. So the goal should be exactly what you suggested, which is to find other sources of revenue to meet the CapEx model here. What I'm saying is coal and petroleum, they're so heavily subsidized and they're so entrenched. I stopped fighting that battle, you know, when we were doing the zero emission, the ZEV-LEV mandates, which by the way was born out of CalSTART. And you had GM and EV1 and the impact model. Mike Gage then was. So we need to come up with new theories of revenue generation for this space. The integration of storage and transportation needs to have an intrinsic value associated with improving urban quality of life. Not greenhouse gases, not global warming, but criterion pollutants. That means ozone, hydrocarbons. If we could achieve that and make it a community-based effort for better health, lower admissions, lower asthma rates, then we have an opportunity to engage a wider portion of the electorate to impose pressure on the decision-making bodies locally and statewide and even federal to make things happen. I believe that we have a future that is incredibly abundant in this space and we can make a global difference, but we need to find that capital. And one of the thoughts that I've had over the past 7 or 8 years that has come more to fruition when I look at a particular model in Orange County, and that is the idea of beginning to collapse the need of congestion pricing with electric vehicle technology and zero emission standards. Can we have, for example, a model where toll roads can help to relieve congestion in high density areas where vehicles sitting in traffic are creating much more emissions than they should be if they're traveling at 50 miles an hour, 55? And can we use the revenue or a percentage of the revenue generated from toll lanes to go into a electric vehicle and storage integration play, right? So if you look at the Orange County Transportation Corridor Agencies, the 91 freeway, 271 and so forth, they're generating hundreds of millions of dollars. It's going to environmental mitigation, open space conservancy, and so forth. Why? And now we have the 110, which, by the way, a lot of us from the challenge communities believe that this was a regressive tax. I have changed my opinion on this because I now know that given the growth that we have in the state of California, there's no way of stemming that, but there is a way of capitalizing on that growth and the effect it's having on our transportation network to generate revenue that should not go to Caltrans. It should go to the cities who have freeways running through their districts. Guess what neighborhoods those are? And that money should then, based on a non-attainment severity basis, go to those areas to help to achieve the integration of storage, electric vehicle, and charging capacity, and use that. So for every mile, when I have a fast track and I go onto the 110, I'm charged, say, $2.50 from downtown LA to the 405. I'd like to see a percentage of that dollar, of that $2.50, go to a designated fund that can't be robbed on for rainy day purposes or anything, specifically designed for underwriting this. Earlier in the lives of this movement, we had AB 2766, we had the Meyer Fund, a lot of vehicle registration support. Now we have to get to vehicle miles traveled and use that as a gauge to generate revenue. So here's a legislative challenge. Is anyone in this state legislature that's coming in for the new session willing to explore with this body the idea of drafting legislation that will consider a toll road charge and subsidy that's generated from it for this type of vision? And I think there's people in this room, the intellectual capacity here is just tremendous. We could go to Mars if we wanted with this amount of IQ. I think you could capitalize on that and come up with a piece of legislation that might ponder that question and at minimum have a series of hearings. You may not get it through, but if we get the 6 hearings, we're able to begin to lift the idea of this possibility for this purposes and find a new, previously unidentified pool of capital to CapEx this model.
So this would be a fee on existing toll roads, like an additional
It would be
charge?
a fee on existing toll roads, but dare I say, we're going to have toll roads in our future because the movement of OEM production and the movement of where we're headed, it's not based on models of vehicles or types of vehicles or CAFE standards. It's going to be based on vehicle miles traveled. You're going to find that the Audis of the world and the more progressive, the Daimlers, they're not going to be, they're going to fully fold into AI and autonomous vehicles and electric vehicles. But they're not going to base the volume of their revenue on the sale of vehicles. It's going to be based on the vehicle miles traveled by their vehicles.
We'll be running out of time real soon, so I'm going to be the middle school teacher for a moment and we have 5 other.
Yeah, so I have six
Thank you, Tom.
people on
Great
my
ideas.
queue. I think if you each keep your remarks to 2-3 minutes, we can probably get through all 6. Because it turns out we don't have that many people sign up for public comment. So consider it a challenge to you all. I like the Mars idea. I think at least one person on the queue is tangentially related to someone who's trying to get us there. Eileen.
Thank you. I'm gonna ask you, Tom, to think about the fact that we still need to do something about the subsidization of particularly oil. And that the removing some of these ridiculous subsidies that have been in place for almost 100 years now, it should be a priority. And I would place that over toll roads in order to gain the revenue, because I think you're right. We have to have a source of revenue to make this change, because it's not just a light change, it's a goods and people movement change, which is particularly daunting. So we need that revenue, and I would say that if you want to reduce the dependence on oil, then you ought to make the oil at least pay what it's costing society. And that means at least, the very least, removing the subsidization that is particularly profound in this state, even relative to the other 42 oil-producing states. So that's my sort of provocative challenge. And then I would say, I guess the other the other thing that I would ask the policymakers in the room is, and I'm going to include you, Senator Pavley, because I don't think you're going to leave this space, is we need to think about one of the biggest barriers to zero-emission vehicles right now is the cost. And right now, when you buy a zero-emission vehicle, you pay excessive sales tax and DMV fees because the cost of the vehicle is so much higher, and that's how those fees are calculated. So it would be so easy, and we've tried to say at least make the sales tax and DMV fees on these vehicles equitable to a conventional vehicle. Why can't we do that? And not just for cars, but for trucks as well. And then think about what would it mean if we actually removed entirely the sales tax and reduced the DMV fees? Is it worthwhile for the general fund to pay for some of this transition? So those are my 2 thoughts: is we need money, and we need to at least make the sales tax and fees on these vehicles equitable.
What do you think the governor would say about that, Fran? You think he'd be open to that?
Oh, is mine? The governor?
Yeah.
No, I would suggest, these are just amazing ideas, but coming up with Tom's suggestion, several hearings or a select committee on these kinds of concepts for the next year or 2 to explore all options for developing revenue enhancements for this particular space and purpose, I think would be an excellent choice, without sort of saying which one is the magic bullet. Maybe it's combinations thereof.
Daniel, 2 minutes if you can.
Yes, I won't talk about Mars. To button hook on a lot of the comments that have been made so far, California is in a fairly unique position in that it has the largest percentage of electric vehicle adoption in the nation, and that's thanks to a number of policies that have been put in place. We talked about stacking in incentives and policies in the prior segment. As Eileen has alluded to, these policies have been in place long enough that they need to be refreshed, and that they need to evolve to the changing marketplace that policymakers in fact want to see take place. Massive electric vehicle adoption can be around the corner. As Tesla can attest to, 400,000 pre-orders for a vehicle that at the time was 2 years out and is now roughly a year out. These vehicles can get down the cost curve into everybody's homes, but we need to establish policies that not only incentivize the purchase, but also enable the customer satisfaction to come with that transition in technology. So the PUC has gotten engaged in these charging discussions and how we can see massive, more substantial levels of charging infrastructure. Getting again to what Rob was talking about in terms of seeing these in homes such as multi-unit dwellings. I have been on the rough end of criticism from being an electric vehicle manufacturer that makes, frankly, high-priced electric vehicles, and the presumption that in fact we are the ones that are instigating electric vehicles is sort of being stuck in that space. I would submit to you that that's a false charge, and that we're just as eager as everybody else to see these cars get into the hands of those who can benefit the most from them. But in order to do that, it's not just about the car. It's about the entire environment and changing the system by which we think about the fueling infrastructure, as well as how it corresponds to the grid. So again, applause for, frankly, having this conversation in this setting. But there's a lot of work that needs to be done in the near term in order to truly instigate this changeover.
Okay, well, I'm going to go at it from a different tact. As the manufacturer of the Tesla for Everyman, which would be a full battery electric transit bus, we primarily serve disadvantaged communities. That number, though, the percentage of riders as riders of necessity versus riders of choice is slowly changing with more millennials that don't even want to own cars. They prefer a more sophisticated transit experience, and riding an electric bus is one. So I think that we have to look at some of the creative ways. It was earlier mentioned in the earlier segment that people or utilities are thinking about creative ways, and I'll just throw out that we think that it would make sense to, especially in the case of transit, where it could be considered a public good, that we really need to start looking at creative ways of making the numbers work. Because similar to an electric car, our battery electric buses are more expensive. But one of the biggest components of that are the cost of the batteries. Well, we've now had conversations with utilities that are thinking about buying the batteries on behalf of the transit agencies, owning those batteries. Now that puts the cost of the bus at parity with a natural gas bus. Now they own that electric energy storage. These buses can hold up to 660 kilowatt hours of energy. The standard extended range bus is 440 kilowatts of energy. If you've got a fleet of 1,000 buses, now you've got serious load. And we've now had conversations even with the IBEW at looking at buses in terms of disaster preparedness. You could dispatch 5 buses to a hospital, and now you've got almost 2 megawatts of energy that could power an electricity, and that's with no fossil fuels. The utilities are looking at this from the perspective of, we can buy this energy storage on the front end as a public good, and then when the batteries reach 80% of their life is when we recommend they swap them out. They can then take those batteries, use them for frequency regulation on the grid. They can use them as energy storage for storing the renewable energy from solar. They can also use them to help those same transit agencies that have bought a fleet of electric buses to help eliminate demand charges, using the battery power at their charging stations in times when, according to their software, the electricity is at its most expensive. They can use the batteries to charge the buses, to charge battery buses, and then when there's a, let's just say, super off-peak, for example, time period where there's tons of renewables on the grid, they can then recharge those same batteries. So I think that allowing utilities flexibility under the premise that transit agencies provide a public good, and at the level on the ground, they're reducing particulate matter where people are standing at bus stops, breathing in these greenhouse gases. You really get a super bang for your buck. And fortunately, because buses are so big and we have over 800 liters of storage capacity, which, to your point, at scale, building battery packs for buses, we get scale in terms of the purchases of the battery cells. That growth will help drive down the cost, similar to the way we've seen the cost. We originally saw the cost of our modules going down because of the passenger vehicle world. We got to the point now where we design our own modules, and we had enough scale to be able to purchase and build our batteries in a cost-effective manner that we've been driving down the cost per kilowatt hour. We feel that, the philosophy that the state has taken, carrot and stick, where there are incentives, but there are also disincentives to purchase fossil fuel vehicles at some point in time. That's really what's going to happen, because we can reach a point where we'll be at price parity. We're getting there rapidly, but the carrot and stick approach will help speed that along.
Thanks, Ken. Okay, continued plea to be short, only because I now have Nancy, Ann, Sean, Carla, Commissioner Peterman, and John. So if we can squeeze everyone in, I would love it. Nancy, next, please.
So I'll make a couple quick points. First of all, thanks to the Energy Commission for some assistance in helping us getting workplace and public charging stations in. So we appreciate the money. In the sort of how are we going to make these investments? First of all, just a plea to anybody involved in the cap and trade discussions that the ability of utilities to generate LCFS credits and sell them is helping us to subsidize installation of electric vehicle chargers all over the city. We have to use it for the benefit of our ratepayers, and it is, as Eileen suggested, one of the ways we can help to capture the real costs of petroleum. So really, we know the refineries hate it, but it's really a good thing. And then the second issue, I think, is about how sort of the impact on utilities of generating more electricity to charge all of these vehicles is dealt with in the greenhouse gas crediting world, is still an important issue that has not been fully addressed by the state or by the local air districts. So, as our generation gets cleaner and cleaner, it becomes less of an issue, but at least for the interim period, we're going to have to figure this one out. And I think also, if we can sort of credit to some extent utility investments in supporting vehicle charging through our greenhouse gas accounting mechanisms, we will get the utilities to be more enthusiastic and want to commit additionally to making sure there's enough vehicle charging infrastructure. Thanks.
Thank you, Nancy. Ann, you're next on the queue.
Great, thanks. So ChargePoint has been around for 8 years. We were started before there were electric vehicles actively being sold in the state. And over the past 8 years, we've seen tremendous growth in our industry. This past 2 quarters have been our best ever. And I think that's really shows that California is on the right path to supporting zero-emission vehicles. There's many things that still need to be done, particularly in disadvantaged communities and multifamily housing, which continue to be underserved markets. But I did want to bring up one challenge for us in particular that hasn't been brought up, and I don't want to disrupt everything right at the end, but for us, the Volkswagen settlement will make or break our industry. This morning, the U.S. District Court approved the final Volkswagen settlement. It includes 2 sources of funding for zero-emission vehicles and light-duty and heavy-medium-duty. One is the Appendix D, which directs funding to each state for the state to determine how it's spent on emissions mitigation. California gets $381 million, huge opportunity for electrifying all types of transportation. And then Appendix C is returned back to Volkswagen $2 billion for Volkswagen to determine how to spend that on potentially creating its own charging station network and really threatening the competition in our industry. ChargePoint was very disappointed to see that nothing was changed in Appendix C despite our efforts to alert the industry to these issues. Many of that has been the result of deals that have been made across the industry with Volkswagen directly. We encourage moving forward, now that it was approved this morning, that the state take a look at how Volkswagen's plan is developed. ARB does not have full control over Appendix C, but it can provide some guidance to Volkswagen on how that money is spent. And we hope that there is a strong look at this so we can make sure that the money, which could be a huge opportunity for the state, is invested in a way that supports competition and helps us keep growing.
Thanks, Ann. Sean.
Thank you. I just wanted to make a couple points about the low carbon fuel standard, which I think only Nancy has mentioned so far. I think the LCFS really has the potential to be a primary regulatory strategy to address subsidies for petroleum over time. It's the mechanism that prices the life cycle carbon of any energy system, and it is specific to transportation fuels. And so not only does it assign deficits to petroleum, which have the potential to net out some of the subsidies provided to the petroleum industry, but it also can effectively subsidize the technological development for low emission technology. And I mean, clearly there could be a more robust role for electricity in particular, in addition to the liquid fuels. And it's hard for me to see anyone other than the petroleum industry seeing the LCFS as as something that would be negative for the state to expand in that way. It's to date, the pricing of carbon through that system has been quite robust in comparison to the cap and trade system. It seems to be a very successful system on the terms that it's been developed so far. But there's always a risk that the standards will not be as aggressive in the future and that there will be loosenings of the standard over time. And of course, there's also a risk even post-2020 about the architecture of the system altogether. And I think it's really important to understand the importance of the LCFS in the transportation network. With the SB 1383 that was passed this term, we also have the potential for more biomethane to be put into the system in ways that I think, at least as a bridge fuel, will be quite helpful. I don't obviously, in the long term, those types of fuels are likely not what's going to be powering our transportation systems. But in the short term, we have fleets of CNG buses that will be around for a while, and making use of biomethane does seem like a useful way to do that. So I just wanted to make a plug for folks to really think about the LCFS and the way that it can be integrated effectively into their business models. I also wanted just very briefly to make a plug for one of our products here out of UCLA. We have a project together with Berkeley Law that we call the California Climate Change and Business Initiative. You can Google it. We've done about 18 policy papers. Several people around this table, I think, have been involved in the workshops that have fed into those. We've done papers on energy storage and distributed generation, reuse of electric vehicle batteries, and most recently biofuels. I brought some copies of the report here on biofuel development, and we'll have one that's forthcoming on electric vehicle charging infrastructure that I think is going to be out quite soon. So I encourage folks to look at it. Some of the reports are several years old. In fact, I think we were ahead of the curve on issues like electric storage through batteries, and the project is continuing to the present day.
Thanks, Sean. Commissioner Peterman.
One observation I have from listening to this conversation is the importance of looking at potentially the battery as whether the battery is the big barrier for deployment on transportation as well as with storage. Because legislatively and even as policymakers, we've approached energy storage, stationary storage, and transportation electrification via different parallel bills and programs. And as we go forward, and we've also tried to be technology agnostic when it comes to energy storage, and so not focusing exclusively on batteries. That being said, batteries have been the primary form of stationary storage we've seen, and so I'd be interested in having a further conversation about, are there things that we should be doing as a state to reduce the cost of batteries overall? Is there something beyond scaling? Is it scaling? And if so, is it scaling? Can we do some type of scaling and purchasing across transportation and stationary storage? Is there an opportunity there? We have some pilots underway where we are looking at second life use for batteries, but what is the next step beyond that? Because given if we want to have ratepayers investing in this space, if ratepayers can invest in transportation electrification and those vehicles can provide grid services that we're currently purchasing stationary storage for, that's something I'm interested in knowing so that we can get more bang for our buck. But where we've been encouraging, and I completely agree with Eileen's comments, the challenge is to have those vehicles be grid services, we need more of them on the system. And so we need more cars in place to even see how practically this can work. So we've really been pushing to see more consumer adoption. But if there are things we can do with the batteries as a state, more technology push that would help with that adoption, I'd like to hear more about that.
Thanks. So, John, we're down to our very final minutes, and I do have 4 people now in the queue for public comment. Do you think you can be quite brief?
Kara,
Yes.
I definitely will try my best.
And you are going to be our last speaker. So in addition to being brief, why don't you be profound and wrap us up?
And I'm also speaking on the third topic. I'm the only speaker on the third topic if I have it, so that's a lot to pack in.
And you're always profound.
Yeah, never. Maybe just to summarize, because it's been a great hearing. I wish it was an all-day hearing. I think Tom is on to something very interesting. As I said at the outset, despite this being the 10th anniversary of AB 32, we've seen 4+ years of continued growth in demand, consumption of gasoline and diesel in California. Vehicle miles traveled up about 6% last year in California, this year over 2015. People are responding to the cheap price of gasoline and diesel, and we're seeing a switch. People are buying more pickup trucks, SUVs. It's deja vu all over again. So I think we need to really be thinking, how do we turn that boat around, that big ship around? There is, I don't think there's been enough engagement with the folks who are really working on climate, also working on the transportation side, the transportation funding side. There's a bill, the transportation package out there right now has a significant increase in gasoline and in diesel. And, I think we need to just start thinking about that as an integrated approach. How do we fund our transportation system? How do we also send the right price signal on what we're trying to do in terms of policy? Tax. Yeah, I think we need to get serious about it, because you look at, there is a real opportunity now with the technology to fund our transportation system, not only through a gas tax, but also through a vehicle miles traveled tax as well. Yeah. Oregon's moving ahead with this. Other states, there are some pilot programs here. That would send a signal to people about, you drive more, you're going to pay more. It would help to start influencing development. There are many ways in which that all starts to come to bear. I'll say that Norway is way ahead of California in terms of EV adoption. They're already beyond the 15% where we want to be in 2025. It's not because they're a rich country. It's because they have adopted a carbon price per the footprint of the car. So the bigger, the more high power, the more carbon emitting the car is, the bigger the tax is. And if you're an EV, they waive the tax. So I think we just need to just start getting very serious about this with the ZEV mandate. We're right at the point where we're supposed to go from 3% to 15% of EV sales in the next 9 years, and we've gone from 0 to 3 over 6. So all of a sudden that we got to really ramp up. I'm really excited because I think the product that's coming out is much better. EV 2.0, the Model 3, the Bolt is much better. I want to echo Professor Hecht's comment about the low carbon fuel standard. Absolutely critical. We've got to maintain that. And I also want to say that, building on what Eileen said, is we need to, for this ramp up in EVs, we need a stable long-term signal sent on incentives. We can't. I think this year-to-year fight over cap and trade money is dead. We need a new way. We are talking with Assemblyman Calderon about resurrecting his bill on it, modeling the Colorado income tax program, which I think is a very effective way to move the industry forward. We could just tie it to metrics, let it sunset at the appropriate time. That would require funds from the general fund to pay for that. But it would take light-duty vehicles out of the cap and trade mix as well, free those funds up for other purposes. So I think we need something like that. And then we also need some sustained investment in the medium and heavy-duty vehicle sector to really help that sector move forward. And the San Joaquin Valley is under tremendous pressure right now from the EPA. They're on a deadline to clean up. They're not going to hit their PM 2.5 numbers. They need a massive investment in cleaner commercial vehicles, trucks and buses, and off-road equipment for them to hit their targets. And I think the ag industry, just politically, the ag industry is willing to come to the table to help fight for those incentives, because they don't want harder regs coming down on them. So I think there's an interesting political opportunity, and I have more to say, but I'll stop there. Thank you very much.
Thank you. So, Senator Pavley or other members of the committee, do you want to say anything at this point, or should we move directly to public comment?
I just want to say thank you, Kara, for moderating this. I found it very not only inspirational but informative, and I want everyone here to exchange contact information because the discussions will go on. I want to also thank your staff that helped put this together before we hear public comments, and my staff as well, my Three Musketeers, Jake Levine, and Dusty Russell assisted me in pulling this off with, of course, UCLA's help. So thank you very much.
I just want to point out that, I certainly don't want to jinx this, and we have no idea what exactly is going to happen, but it is possible that this election will open up a whole new set of opportunities and it could open a window that will only be open for the next 2 years to really do some bold work in this area. And so I want to have people think about that and think about how time is of the essence. Obviously, we don't know exactly what's going to happen, but it is a special election, and it could result in some special opportunities.
From your lips to God's ear. Okay. So with that, I have 4 people signed up for public comment, and with sincere apologies, I'm going to ask that you limit your comments to 1 or 2 minutes each, just because of where we are with the time. Thank you so much. I have Lane Semper first, then Professor Rajit Gad, Ben Zuckerman, and Julian Garachieka. Apologies if I butchered that last name. So you should join us at the front podium. You get the place of honor. And we'll start with Lane Semper. I believe that microphone should be working. Again, just a minute or 2 if you can. Thanks.
This is my first time. I'm a novice. Lane Semper. I'm one of the Honorable Al Gore's climate reality leaders. I volunteer for Safe Porter Ranch. My question is for Karen. Pardon me, I'm so sorry, I forgot your last name with DWP. You mentioned about
Nancy Sutley.
Oh, I'm so sorry. My apology. Again, I'm new. But I'm so grateful for this opportunity because tomorrow I have to go to LA City Council to talk to them and try to convince them to go with the 100% renewables. Because on October 13th, I gave public comment. They passed the motion, but now it's down to 65%. So I wasn't sure if you're aware of that. It's so important for residents to know about this so we can take the day off from work or trying to find work to provide public comment, or we don't have a chance to fight for clean energy renewables. So if there's a way that you can think of to advise the public so we can have a voice, that's my question.
Thank you. Thank you, Ms. Semper.
Thank you.
I don't know, Nancy, if you want
we
to chime in.
We will have some opportunity for the public to get involved in some of the, as we move forward, so the research questions around getting to 100% clean energy, and I'm happy to talk to you afterwards.
Thanks. Professor Gad.
Hi, I'm Rajit Gad from UCLA. In labs like ours in the School of Engineering, our students are creating innovations and creating advanced technologies on battery energy storage integration, electric vehicle integration, taking energy from the car battery and sending it back to the grid, integration of renewables with integration of renewables with battery energy storage. And one of the things that we find is as the students are doing innovations, a lot of the innovations are in a completely new paradigm of smart grid, which is to do with integration of software, with communications, with controls, as opposed to building widgets. So if we think about the traditional model of certification of products in the electric grid, it has to do with, you have a widget and you get certified and you get going. In this new model, there's a completely new paradigm of certification. I think that has to come. So I just had a suggestion. LA City could really be a leader in this space if we had a place where we could test out these ideas and concepts that are really far out. We think they're really far out, but they may not be as far out. So I think that could be an interesting opportunity, just a suggestion and a comment. And LA City could really lead in that, especially I think we have 3 top-notch universities, UCLA, USC, and JPL, Caltech. It'll be a great place for a testing ground for the innovations coming out. Just a suggestion.
Thank you. Ben Zuckerman.
Hi, I'm also from UCLA, and thank you for a chance to make a comment. Just as an aside, I've had panels on the roof of my house since 2002, and I've had a Nissan Leaf for the last 5.5 years. And the only expense, the only money I put into the Leaf in 5.5 years is the brake fluid was changed. The fuel, because the panel's completely free, and I don't pollute when I drive through disadvantaged neighborhoods, people living near freeways and whatnot. At any rate, my question has to do with some comments that a number of my friends who would like to install PV on their houses, but have told me they won't or can't because it's too expensive. And I thought with the reduced price of the panels, it's come down an order of magnitude almost since 2002. I don't understand why there's still an issue where my friends, who I respect, their intelligence, tell me they've checked things out and it's still way too expensive for them to install solar in the house. I don't understand what's going on.
Thank you, Professor Zuckerman.
Solar City is here.
Yeah, exactly. Unless somebody wants to jump in and try and answer that puzzling question. I think by the way, our fourth, I had announced 4 public members. The fourth had to leave. So that's the close of our public comment period.
I had one last comment I forgot to acknowledge and thank our Senate caucus that came down to provide the web stream and help and assist in conducting this hearing. I appreciate that. I've been working with them, I think, the last 8 years, and so they're a great asset to the state. We have some of the best agencies on the planet. We have staff that are amazing that work behind the scenes in Sacramento, our district offices, and then for our caucuses, and that's why one of the reasons why California can accomplish so much. So I want to thank all of you for your attendance. We have a lot of work to do, don't we? Not only 2030 targets, but all the pressing air pollution and other kinds of health impacts that we're facing due to climate change, and our biggest challenge will be reducing the use of petroleum that I hope we'll see in our lifetime, dramatic reductions, if not at all. Eduardo or Ben Allen, any final comments before we adieu?
Does anyone here have a good answer for the gentleman about the cost of installation, just since it's hanging out there?
Well, there's different financing mechanisms. I know Solar City and some other companies too will usually figure out how much it costs, and maybe they'll put in the upfront financing costs, but then you'll pay it back through the savings on your utility bills. So there's different kinds of financing options that have sort of made solar panels available to traditional families.
Some of it has to also do with the net metering program that some of our, particularly our municipality utility agencies are restructuring those programs. I know that in our backyard, Imperial Irrigation District has taken upon themselves to move in a different direction, and it has caused a lot of headache within the industry, making it that much more.
So some of the munis have them.
Yeah.
I would say I'd be interested in knowing how much electricity they consume normally because cost is relative to what your alternative is. And so if they're high users, then it becomes more economic. If they're low users, then the grid, which is going to be 50% renewable, so that's not a bad bet, may be the cheaper option. So I think you've got to think about those issues.
I would just like to comment, number one, actually Los Angeles has a very, very good and efficient permitting process in place. Panel prices have come down, and also the efficiencies within the companies have been gone up tremendously. So I would just encourage you to get a couple quotes from local solar installers. They will be able to install probably at like 50% of the price that you paid quite a few years ago. And I can refer a couple of them, but if you get a couple of competitive quotes, you will find probably a very good value in a solar installation these days. And solar incentives are still available from DWP, and tax credits available as well as financing options. So I would just literally try to get 3 or 5 quotes. I can refer you to a couple of local installers here.
I wanted to echo what Commissioner Peterman said, and just add my own experience to it, which is our household is a very low consumer of electricity, and when I costed out solar, the payback was terrible compared to a lot of my friends and colleagues who use a lot more electricity. I found it very ironic that a low consumer or somebody who's very energy efficient actually has the most barriers to being able to install it economically, and it would be interesting to see if there might be models that could get past that.
Well, thanks. I'll ask my friends whether or not they're low energy. That's the issue.
And thank them for that.
Again, on behalf of UCLA, thank you so much, Senator Pavley and others, for allowing us to play a role and to host this hearing. It was really terrific having you. And thank you
discussion format.
so much again for all of your great work in the legislature.
All right. Have a good day.
Thank you.
I was planning on next week.